Alrighty. Charlie in the Great Glass Elevator. Stand like that. Careful, you don't want to bump the table, otherwise it will fall this time, okay?
Okay. Charlie in the Great Glass Elevator.
Okay. Are we ready for Charlie in the Great Glass Elevator?
We are ready.
Okay, we're gonna go live. We are going live. 3, 2, 1, 0. Okay, come here, guys. Alrighty. Anyway, this is Chapter 11 and Charlie in the Great Glass Elevator. Okay, get over on the other side. Scoot over to the other side. Here, go on the other side. There you go. I don't think this is going to hit that. If it's going to hit that, we don't want it to hit that. Alright. That's careful, because if it hits that, everything's going to fall. No, I don't want everybody to see my feet. Yeah. Alright, sit down.
I'm squashed.
Alright, here we go. You're squishy. The Battle of the Nids. So far, remember, everybody's being attacked now. Willy Wonka got this great idea to go back and tow the other space shuttle to bring it back into Earth because the Nids knocked out their rockets and everything. So, Grandpa Joe, sir, shouted Mr. Wonka, kindly jet yourself over to the far corner of the elevator there and turn the handle. It lowers the rope. A rope? No good, Mr. Wonka. The Nids will bite through a rope in 1 second. It's a steel rope, said Mr. Wonka. It's made of scorched steel. If they try to bite through that, their teeth will splinter like spilkins. To your buttons, Charlie. You've got to help me maneuver. We're going right over the top of the commuter capsule, and then we'll try to hook onto somewhere and get a firm hold. Remember, the glass elevator is Nid-proof. The space capsule for the space shuttle hotel, the hotel is not Nid-proof, neither is the space shuttle that they're sending to it. So only the glass elevator. And remember, we've got all of Charlie's family in the elevator and Willy Wonka. Okay, so like a battleship going into action, the great glass elevator with booster rockets firing moves smoothly in over the top of the enormous commuter capsule. The Nids immediately stopped attacking the capsule and went for the elevator. Squadron after squadron of giant vermicious Nids flung themselves furiously against Mr. Wonka's marvelous machine. Wham! Crash! Bang! The noise was thunderous and terrible. The elevator was tossed about, the sky like a leaf, and inside it, Grandma Josephine, Grandma Georgina, Grandpa George, floating in their nightshirts, were all yowling and screeching and flapping their arms and calling for help. Mrs. Bucket had wrapped her arms around Mr. Bucket and was clasping him so tightly that one of his shirt buttons punctured his skin. Charlie and Mr. Wonka, as cool as two cantaloupes, were up near the ceiling working the booster rockets, controls, and Grandpa Joe shouting war cries and throwing curses at the Nids was down below, turning the handle that unwound the steel rope. At the same time, he was watching the rope through the glass floor of the elevator. Starboard a bit, Charlie, shouted Grandpa Joe. We're right on top of her now. Forward a couple of yards, Mr. Wonka. I'm trying to get the hook hooked around the stumpy thing sticking out in the front of there. Hold it. I've got it. That's it. Forward a little. Now, see it holds. More. The big steel rope tightened. It held. And now, wonder of wonders, with her booster rockets blazing, the elevator began to tow the huge commuter capsule forward and away. Full speed ahead, shouted Grandpa Joe. She's gonna hold. She's holding fine. All booster firing, cried Mr. Wonka, and the elevator leaped ahead. Still the rope held. Mr. Wonka jetting himself down toward Grandpa Joe and shook warmly by the hand. Well done, sir, he said. You did a brilliant job under heavy fire. Charlie looked back at the commuter capsule, some 30 yards behind them on the end of the tow line. It had little windows up front, and in the windows he could clearly see the flabbergasted faces of the shuckwork Shaped and Shaller. Charlie waved to them and gave them the thumbs-up signal. They didn't wave back. They simply gasped. They couldn't believe what was happening. Grandpa Joe blew himself upward and hovered beside Charlie, bubbling with excitement. Charlie, my boy, he said, we've been through a funny things together lately, but never anything like this. Grandpa, where are the Nids? They've suddenly vanished. Everyone looked around. The only nid in sight was their old friend with the purple behind, still cruising alongside in its unusual place, still glaring in the elevator. Just a minute, cried Grandpa. We go turn the TV. Just turn the TV off. 1 second. We're gonna take just a second. I got my TV came off pause and. All right, get back here quickly. Okay. Grandpa Joe blew himself upward and hovered beside Charlie, bubbling with excitement. Charlie, my boy, he said, we've been through a few funny things together, but lately never anything like this. Grandpa, where are the nids? They've suddenly vanished. Everyone looked around. The only nid in sight was their old friend with the purple behind, still cruising along in its unusual place, still glaring into the elevator. Just a minute, cried Grandma Josephine. What's that I see over there? Again they looked, and this time, sure enough, away in the distance, in the deep blue sky of outer space, they saw a massive cloud of verminous nids, wheeling and circling like a fleet of bombers. If you think we're out of the woods yet, you're crazy, shouted Grandma Georgina. I fear no nids, said Mr. Wonka. We've got them beaten now. Poppy rot and pigwash, said Grandma Josephine. Any moment now they're going to be at us again. Look at them. They're coming in closer. This was true. The huge fleet of nids had moved in at incredible speed and was now flying level with the great glass elevator, a couple of 100 yards away on the right-hand side. The one with the bump on its rear end was much closer, only 20 yards away on the same side. It's changing shape, cried Charlie. The nearest one. What's it going to do? It's getting longer and longer. And indeed it was. The mammoth egg-shaped body was slowly stretching itself like a chewing gum, becoming much longer and thinner, until in the end it looked exactly like a long, slimy green serpent, as thick tree, and as long as a football field. At the front end were the eyes, big and white, with red centers at the back. A kind of tapering tail at the end. The very end of the tail was the enormous round swollen bump it had gotten when it crashed against the glass. The people floating inside the elevator watched and waited. Then they saw the long rope-like nid turning and coming straight, but quite slowly toward the great glass elevator. Now it began actually wrapping its ropey body around the elevator itself. Once around it went, then twice around, and very horrified it was to be inside and to see the soft green body squishing against the outside of the glass no more than a few inches away. It's tying us up like a parcel, yelled Grandma Josephine. Bunkum, said Wonka. It's going to crush us in its coils, wailed Grandpa George. Never, said Mr. Wonka. Charlie glanced quickly back to the commuter capsule. The sheet white faces of the Shuckworth, Shanks, and Shallow were pressed against the glass as the little windows terror-struck, stupefied, stunned, their mouth open, their expressions froze like fish fingers. Once again, Charlie gave them the thumbs-up signal. Showler acknowledged it with a sticky grin, but that was all. Oh, screamed Grandma Josephine. Get that beastly squishy thing away from here. Having curled the body twice around the elevator, the nid now proceeded to tie a knot with its two ends. A good strong knot, left over right, then right over left. When it had pulled the knot tight, they remained about 5 yards of one end hanging loose. This was the end, with the eyes on it. But it didn't hang loose for long. It quickly curled itself into the shape of a huge hook, and the hook struck straight out sideways from the elevator as though waiting for something else to hook itself onto it. While all this was going on, nobody had noticed what the other nids were up to. Mr. Wonka, Charlie cried. Look at the others. What are they doing? What indeed? These two had all changed shape and had become longer, but not nearly so long as so thin as the first one. Each of them had turned itself into a kind of thick rod, and the rod was curled around the other ends, at the tail end and at the head end, so that it made a double-end hook. And now all the hooks were linking up into the long chain. 1,000 nids all joining together and curving around in the sky to make a chain of nids half a mile long or more. And a nid at the very front of the chain, whose front hook was not, of course, hooked up to anything, was leading them into a wide circle and sweeping it toward the great glass elevator. Hey, shouted Grandpa Joe. They're going to hook up with this brute who's tied himself around us and tow us away, cried Charlie. To the planet Vermes, gasped Grandma Josephine. 18,427 miles from here. They can't do that, cried Mr. Wonka. We're doing the towing around here. They're gonna link up, Mr. Wonka, Charlie said. They really are. We can't stop them. They're going to tow us away, and they're going to tow the people we're towing away as well. Do something, you old fool, shrieked Grandma Georgina. Don't just float about looking at them. I must admit, said Mr. Wonka, that's the first time in my life I find myself at a bit of a loss. They all stared in horror through the glass at the long chain of verminous nids. The leader of the chain was coming closer and closer, the hook with its two angry eyes on it was out and near and ready. In 30 seconds, it would link up with the hook of the nid wrapped around the elevator. I want to go home, wailed Grandma Josephine. Why can't we all go home? Great thundering tomcats, cried Mr. Wonka. Home is right. What on earth am I thinking of? Come on, Charlie, quick, re-entry. You take the yellow buttons, press it all the way till you're worth it. I'll handle it a lot, Charlie, and Mr. Wonka literally flew to the buttons. Hold your hat, shouted Mr. Wonka. Grab your gizzards, we're going down. Rockets started firing out of the elevator from all sides. It tilted and it gave a sickening lurch, and then plunged downward into the Earth's atmosphere at a simply colossal speed. Retro rockets, bellowed Mr. Wonka. I mustn't forget to fire the retro rockets. He flew over to another series of buttons and started playing on them like a piano. The elevator was now streaking downward head first, upside down, and all the passengers themselves were floating upside down as well. Help! Cried Grandma Georgina. All the blood's going to my head. Then turn yourself the other way up, said Mr. Wonka. That's easy enough, isn't it? Everyone blew and puffed and turned somersaults in the air until the last they were all the right way up. How's the tow rope holding Grandpa? Mr. Wonka called out. They're still with us, Mr. Wonka, sir. The rope's holding fine. It was an amazing sight. The great glass elevator streaking downward, the Earth with its huge commuter capsule in tow behind it. But the long chain of nids was coming after them, following them down, keeping pace with them easy. And now the hook of the leading nid in the chain was actually reaching out and grasping for the hook made by the nid on the elevator. We're too late, screamed Grandma Georgina. They're going to link up and haul us back. I think not, Mr. Wonka. Don't you remember what happens when nids enter the Earth's atmosphere at high speed? He gets red hot. He burns away in a long fiery trail. He becomes a shooting nid. Soon the dirty beast will start popping like popcorn. They all streaked downward, sparks beginning to fly off. The sides of the elevator, the glass glowed pink, then red, then the nids. Sparks also began to fly off the long chain of nids, and the leading nid in the chain started to shine like red-hot poker. So did all the others. So did the great slimy brute coiled around the elevator itself.